Kwalo muhle sikuvusele sikwamukele ehlelweni Kusile Breakfast Show is the 30th of October 2023. Siqala lusuku lwalomuhla ngama temperatures la cold, very cold temperatures kubhekekile vele ukuthi lusuku lonke nje kube lusuku lolitawuba makhata kakhulu. Kanti ke kusesenjalo kuvakelelwe ukuthi eMaswati nanawo ke atsheliwe lo ukuthi kufuna ngathi lamuhla ngambatha impahla ethi ngathi tifuthumele kakhulu ngoba umsebenzi wesibayana nawo uyachubeka entasi esigodlweni lusuku nje litawuthi lusachubeka encenye kusabombana nensimbi yangemfica umsebenzi utabe sowuya ngase malungiselelweni ekutheni uqale nasesukwini lalomuhla. Kodwa nje kungakunjalo nathi ke Kusile Breakfast Show sinako lesikuphathele kona lo mhla lesethemba ukuthi utakuthokodela ekakhulu uma sibuka indzaba letendeke kuyo lemphela sonto. Sitawufuna nje kubuka temidlalo naye Linda Master Dlamini kubuka nje lapha ekhaya emaSkozla labekhona imidlalo lebekhona kubuka nema fixtures ukuthi sekeme kanjani sivale liviki lesisuka kulo sibuka ukuthi ngathi imadlenya seloko nje iwabambise pass onke lamanye ama team ehamba embili yodwa. Kanti ke sitawufuna kuchubeka sibuke naseningizimu Africa iDStv Premiership ne rugby njengoba ke South Africa came victorious against yona iNew Zealand kumanqamu ayo ke iRugby World Cup ngescore sa 12-11. We really want to discuss that and what it means for South Africa in the history books masikhuluma nje ngemidlalo werugby. Sitawubuka ke naleminye imidlalo English Premier League as well as La Liga. We saw the La Liga El Clasico as well as the Manchester Derby in the English Premier League. We also want to put a spectacle at indzabeni tetebucala lapha eveni sitawukhulumisana nemchumanisi wemaphoyisa embube nesive phindile Pico vilakati endzabeni wekuthi siyakhumbula ukuthi elangeni la itolo sivukene tindzaba letibhlungu ekuthenini ke kulendvodza leshadile married deputy sheriff that has reportedly shot dead his girlfriend and 3 other females in her flat at Goche Township lapha eZulwini. Kanti ke kutfolakele nalo ukuthi ke wesihlanu siyena usurvivile leyo shooting and kubikwa ukuthi ke ucritical lana eMbabane Government Hospital. Benhlangano yakaswaga bathi it's time to declare gender based violence a national emergency. Tonke tindzaba leti lesifuna ukukhulumisa naye phindile Pico vilakati kodwa akusiyo leyo kuphela. Utakhumbula ukuthi kuphindze kwaba ne-accident lebekhona elangeni lekugcina lesibaya evikini leliphelile. Siyafuna kuva ke nalapho ngoba siyeva ukuthi kune transport tsite ibus lebe involved in an accident killing 4 pedestrians on their way to church. Kanti ke phindze kwaba nalenye indzaba levakele ukuthi kunebantu lesekungathi they are missing kuyo yona lempela sonto lesibuya kuyo ngathi tebucala dikhula ngepace leshaqisa ligogo le frightening. Siyafuna kuva kuphikho ukuthi ngabe bangilabo nje lababuke vele temthetho batasilungisela kanjani lendzaba lena nicwayisa nje sive ekutheni bucala phela kufuna kungabi yinvo lebonakala ngalendlela lesebonakala ngakhona. Ngoba muhle sitatibona tonke leto makugabanca insimbi yesithupha nakugabanca yesikhombisa kwanyala ke sibuke tindzaba lethamba embili abaphephandzabeni. Asicale sibuke tindzaba lethamba embili ephephandzabeni Times of Eswatini. Deputy sheriff shoots, kills 4 women, surrenders. Married man opens fire on girlfriend and 4 others. 5th victim in critical condition. He told me his girlfriend for a national kissed in front of him. Kusho businessman. That's the leading story. Ganzige kulamanye lahamba embili. Rating app suggests panelists are cabinet candidates. On another one, Crown, how civil servants Habi defrauded, spent 5 million emalangeni. Mixed feelings as corpses parts donation now low. Those are the leading headlines. Phephandzabeni lalamhla Times of Eswatini asibuke temidlalo khona ku Times of Eswatini. Good outing for Mbabane Giants as bull and losing streak Landers fire 2 unanswered goals against Sundowns while Swallows scrape past Seabirds. Kubuka nje imiphumela lebekhona kule mpelasonto kutemidlalo lapha kangwana on another one. Manchester City cruise past Manchester United on what was the Manchester derby in the United Kingdom in the English Premier League. On another one, Yellow Action Thrills, a Highlanders diehard joined forces with Swallows superfan Bonda Simelane as they both celebrated the double victory of their beloved teams. South Africa khona Sundowns dominant over Al Ali. Siqhubekela embili sibuka Eswatini Daily News lomuhla ekuseni. The leading story: Deputy Sheriff is arrested for allegedly shooting 3 women dead. Women take the lead in speech rating on the EBC Sibaya app is the second leading headline lomuhla Eswatini Daily News. Kanti ke kuvala leto letigijima imbili, government sends condolences to bus accident victims. Kutemidlalo Eswatini Daily News this morning. Sibona ke bulldozer as a big headline. The capital city giants Mbabane Highlanders returned to winning ways with a convincing 2-0 victory over Denver Sundowns labedlalwa eMavuso Sports Centre ngosonto, which moved the Black Bull to the 6th position on the log standings. On another one, there's no place for Lindo Stika in Sihlangu. Kanti South Africa solo nje batfokotela i-Rugby World Cup success yabo. SA revels in Rugby World Cup success is the last story to make the leading headlines with Eswatini Daily News this morning. Eswatini Financial Times: Earwade holds 3.5 billion emalangeni Mpakeni Dam project is the leading story. Ihambelana ke nalenye indzaba lekhulumisa clinic group leseyipave a new era in healthcare. And another one, but Ugandan, Kenyan and Zambian currencies are to sleep. Can Highlanders end the rot at Downs' expense? See, the back page here, Financial Times. Bull in 500,000 emalangeni Umbro deal. Capital City Giants Mbabane Highlanders is on the verge of clinching landmark technical sponsorship deal with Giant Sportswear company Umbro. On another one, AE board members distance themselves from coach Moses DC hearing. Once again, on the international front, Newcastle's Tonali is banned for 10 months for betting offences. Betoke leti indzaba letigijima embili emaphephandzabeni lomhla ekuseni asibahle lemakethe sitabuya sibuke tindzaba talapha ekhaya.
Umsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV utibophelele kuhlonipha nekulandzela umgomo wetekusakata loweluswe libandla letekuchumana eveni.
Ngephansi kwalomgomo sitimisele kusakata tindzaba tenteya ngaleso sikhatsi tindzaba letide magama lacosheme letitsembekile letitsinza tonke tinhlangothi naletisebaleni
kusukela kutepolitiki, tetemphilo, tekulima, tetinkantolo netemhlaba wonke jikelele. Siniletsela tindzaba njengoba tinjalo ngaleso sikhatsi letenteka ngaso.
Kanzi kulomsakato siphindze sikulethele lonke luhlobo lwetemidlalo kusuka emidlalweni welibhola letinyawo kuye emidlalweni ledlalelwa ematafuleni kanye naleto letiqhamuka ngaphandle kwakuleli.
Leti tindzaba lowutiletselwa ngumsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV.
Kwalomuhle imizuzu lelishumi kubumbene insimbi yesithupha kulesikhatsanyala ke sibukena titindzaba talapha ekhaya. Emaswati ati imbandzakanye nemsebenti welive lobalulekile lokusibaya kanti ke lo msebenzi wekwakha live ube impumelelo lenkhulu kusukela avulwa silo semhlaba. Umsebenzi ke utawuchubeka nangemsombuluko lokulisuku ke lwalomuhla ekuseni. Lo mbiko lolandzelako ubuka ukuthi sichubeke kanjani sibaya kuleli viki.
Kusukela ngemsombuluko ngesikhathi isilo semhlaba sivula sibaya eMaswati yaliqhamukisa totonke tinkhalo telive aphelela esigodleni elidzidzini akha kwawo ngendlela yawo ahamba ngemthetho-sisekelo welive. Sibaya senganywe bunye besive eMaswati yahlangene athetana ngemibono nangemasu lahlahlelwe ekwakha nekuqinisa live ngaphansi kwetihloko letakhelwe kuqhukuluta kukhulumisana lokungenamingcele lokutawuletha inqubekela phambili yelive lecukethe imivo yesive. Kusukela ngemsombuluko tichazwa ngalokujulile tinkhundla sive sibeka imivo yaso ngelihlobo lwandvunankhulu lotawuba ngukapteni wahulumende lotawulandzela kanti kusesenjalo solo tiyevakala tikhalo tincomo netiphakamiso tesive etindzabeni letiphatselene nenhlalakahle yaso. Kunelibandla letikhulumi lelinikwe tihloko letifaka ekhatsi kukhulisa umnotho kulwa nebusweti nekuphemba imisebenti kweselakala kwemitsi etibhedlela tahulumende kugwema umsindvo loko waba khona eveni kulwa nenkhohlakalo nekukhwabanisa timali tembuso lesive sithi abagolwe bagwetshwe benti baloku livuke lime ngetinyawo nelibandla lekulwa nenkhohlakalo kanti lesinye isihloko kube kutsandza nekuvikela buve elive. Elibandla liphekwa sive ngemibuto lebanti. Sikhetsekile-ke sibasa lonyaka njengobe senabele nakito tebuchwephesha ngekutsi sive sakhelwe lithuba lekukala sisindvo setinkhulumo taleli bandla nge-app liyakhiwe indzawo yetebuchwephesha netebucubungula i-Royal Science and Technology Park. Kuphumene ematiko ahulumende lachize tikhwama tekutfutfukisa sive kuva nekuphendvula tikhalo tesive ngekusebenta kwaletikhwama. Betiphakame njalo tandla ngesikhathi umsebenzi wolusuku ugocotwa ngemigcibelo lokuyinkhomba yokuthi sive senenshisekelo yokuqhubeka nekwakha live. Lokuhle ngiko ukuthi sibaya sitawujinge siqhubeke nangemsombuluko kusasa lokukusako.
Sikhathi ekuqala kwemsebenzi wakusasa ngo-9.
Lobika kwetindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya esigodleni elidzidzini.
Hulumende asebenzisa sikhulumeli sakhe Alpheus Nxumalo sawulilele imindeni tihlobo kanye nebangani yabomake labashone ngesikhathi ibhasi lebeyikadze ilayishe eMaswati lawo labekaya esibayeni bashayisa ibabulala. Labalabane labashonile belibandla leHawane Christian Life Community Church. Umfundisi walelibandla uthi babili balaba labashonile bemndeni munye bese munye ubangimake mfundisi.
Lokhulumela hulumende welakuleli Alpheus Nxumalo undlulise emave endvuvuto ngalenhlekelele yalengoti.
Siyabekhutha nebekunene bonke labathinzekile kule ngoti nekubonga ke sonke sive lokufaka ekhatsi bona be-emergency nemaphoyisa lasheshe efika kuleyo ndzawo kuyawulesita kwekuthi kusheshe kubonakale ukuthi kukhona yini longasinza kulabo labathinzekile. Belisonto siyabekhutha kakhulu bazalwane bekuyinkonzo lenkulu lena ubuka kuyingcungcuthela kodwa laba abasafika ngakhona nabo siyabancestela abazalwane bachubeke balithandazele live nalaba bekuneneke bebakule bus nabo siyathi kwekuthi uyethuka nawuva ukuthi imoto lohamba ngayo seyidale ingoti nabo bekunene siyabancestela siyakholwa nekwekuthi noma bangasafika ngalabe baye khona kuyawubeka umcondo wabo esibayeni kwakhalive kodwa lisekhona lithuba ngemvulo kanzi ke futhi phela nangalamanye emalanga lithuba liyabuye livuleke.
Labomake badibana nalokufa nje bebakatse bangenela inkonzo yabomake esontweni leHawane Christian Life Community Church. Umfundisi waleli bandla Timothy Makhanya uthi batsabuke kakhulu bangileli bandla.
Kwendeka lokho kunebantwana lesihlala nabo khona la lesibalungisela ukuthi bathole counseling nabo naleti hlobo nato kuyayidzinga icounseling. Lokwendakalile ke futhi ukuthi munye kulaba abakagininza ngoba laba kagininza kulo 4 babili bosisi lababili munye wabo bekahamba nemntwana lo mntwana vele singasho ukuthi traumatized simthusile lesimo makwakhe bekasaphila but lo mntwana yena kumthika bedile ngoba bekambona makwakhe lomkhulu lapha phasi.
Lengoti yenteke ngemigcibelo ekseni kanti labomake labane labagcine bashonile ibashayisa nje lebhasi ngemuva kwekuthi iphume emgwaceni lomkhulu etindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla. Mina Themba Inkosi Mavimbela siseHawane.
Indvodza idubule yabulala singani sayo kanye nabomake labatsatfu kanti-ke lo munye uyelashwa esibhedlela. Umxhumanisi wesive kanye namaphoyisa Superintendent Phindile Vilakati uzivumile lesigameko lesishaqisa lugogo lesenteke ezulwini.
Lendvodza lesolwa ngekudubula ibulale labomake labane kuthiwa ingilomunye abosheriff esifundeni sakaManzini. Lesigameko kuthiwa senteke bese kuyoshaya insimbi ye-12 ngemgcibelo ebusuku. Kuthiwa senteka nje kuleli khaya bekade kunelidzili lapho khona belingenelwe ngilomsolwa kanye nezingane sakhe nalapho labanye labagcine balimala. Lofike ngekushesha la kwenteke khona lesigameko longakathanzi kuvela uthi lesigane salomsolwa lesishonile singudadzi wakhe lomdzala. Uthi uthole licingo kubomshana wakhe wamatisa kusakaphutfume njengalokhu bese kuchuma sibhamu kulendlu. Uthi nakefika uthole idumbu phansi wabuka abantwana wabakhanza ukuthi baphephile.
It's an act of an animal. He is not human. Kodwa umuntu lo wenda indvo lenje lokuphila. Small kids labasele. I have no words lengawasho. Tumlonga bulala abantu labangaka. For what? Umpoce ngani? I just wish kutsina kungake kube ne justice for what he has done. I want the law to take its course.
Umxhumanisi wamaphoyisa kanye nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakati axoxisana nalomsakato elicingweni uthi umsolo uthi nikele etandleni temaphoyisa.
Indvodza ke bese seyathi sarende emaphoyisa nakalobamba naleso sibhamu sayo lesisebenzisile kulimata laba bekunene. Siyachubeka kusemaphoyisa naloluphenyo. Kungaba nenkonje kuchubeka sinxusa sive ukuthi asitame ukuthi sithole indlela zokuhlanganiswa. Nangabe khona indzaba langayibona ngaso linye. Sitawusolo sichubekile nekubakhuthaza ukuthi lova ukuthi sibhamu lasisebenzisako noma naso akekho kahle ngaso kulawa malanga. Angasilethe emaphoyisa nasigcine khona.
Umbiko wemaphoyisa losuka ngenyanga yamabasa eminyakeni wa-2022 kuya enyangeni yaBhimbidvwane kulomnyaka losetulo uveta ukuthi emacala ekubulalana inyuku ekusuka ku-124 kuya ku-231 lokhu kukhula nga-86.3%. Lizathu kuthiwa kucabana emndenini kusebenzisa kabi tshwala kubala kuletinye tetimbangela. Etindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla, nginathemba inkosi Mavimbela sisezulwini.
Siphepho lesihlasele ngemgcibelo etindzaweni letahlukene telive silimete emakhala ngetulu kwelikhulu. Ngaphansi komphathi welibandla leliphungate ehlakalo Russell Dlamini uthi tisebenti taleli bandla solo tiyachubeka nekucaphela simo kuletinye tindzawo lapho kungavela sidzingo sekuthi bantfu batfole lusito.
Emaswati lamanyenti asele ashacekile ngesizatfu setimvula letihambisana nesangcotfo lokulimete imphahla yesive. Sive-ke kuletindzawo letihlaselekile sibeke kanjena.
Sihambama ngetithuba tabo 4 kwachamuka nje litulu lelikhulu lelinesangqotho lesikhulu lehlisa nje ematshela amakhulu sathi sibona savele sabona emanti agcwala indlu. Nawu uthi uyabuka-ke emathayila vele sekadzabukile abhoboke timbobo akusabeke nje nendishi.
Wehle matshe lamanyenti lamakhulu langange-ice le ice leboshwako.
Uthe na ufika lo monakalo kwadzilika lamatshe kwahahabuka lamathayela. La kuhahabuka lamathayela kwangena lamanti athi vo lamanti asisabonani nalandlini sekumnyama kuthe khwishi.
Umphathi welibandla leliphungate ehlakalo Russell Dlamini uchaza ngemibiko letfolwe ngileli bandla.
Emakhaya ayafika elikhulwini latsinzekile even lonke. Sinekukholelwa ukuthi le nombolo isetawukhula. Tinkhundla nje lenginato lapha kunamangcongco kunalamgaphi kunalobamba lomdzala kunakwaluseni kunamanzini north enaletinye ke manje ngisengatholi kahle ukuthi onke lama figures kuyo yonke inkhundla but nje sesinaso siciniseko sokuthi emakhaya siyangedoluka la kwelikhulu latsinzekile.
Umbiko wa 2021 lokhishwe inhlangano yakamhlaba yetangoma telitulu i-World Meteorology Organization uveta ukuthi lapha eAfrika simo selitulu sitawuba ngulesibucayi kakhulu ngekuthi kube netiphepho kushise kakhulu kuphindze kube makhata kakhulu kanjalo kuphindze kube nesomiso. Etindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nginathemba Shabangu kaManzini.
Inhlangano ikwakha indvodza lefundzisa kakhulu bafana nabobabe ngebumgcokwa bekucedza kuhlukubetana. Itsi kuba khona kwetinkhulumiswano tekucedza kuhlukubeteka esibayeni kuyinkhomba kwekutsi live laseswatini litibophelele kangakanani noma-ke litibophelele kangakanani kucedza kuhlukubeteka. Umcondzisi walenhlangano Sonic Dlamini uthi lokhu kukhombisa ukuthi sive sesatinga lokuphelele ngebungoti bekuhlukubetana.
Kuyasithokozisa kuva ukuthi ingcenye yaleti nkulumo letikhulunywa lapha naletikhalo labanato bantu tiyakufaka ekhatsi indzaba yokuthi phela bomake nabantwana besifazane botsatewethu bese bayahlukubeteka netebulili bahlukubeteke ngesikhume bashayeke. Kepha-ke le ndzaba yokuhlukubeteka vele kwabomake kungilenye yetintfo letifaka ekhatsi phela bona ukuthi live selithuthuke kanjani nekuthi lihambe kanganani emigomeni yabo nekuhlanyana lamanye amave ekuncobeni nekulwa nako kuhlukubeta kwabantu nobulili. Siyathokoza singikwakha indvodza kukhomba ukuthi bantu sebevile nelive liyakutsatsa futhi liyakukhutsata lokhu lesikushoko.
Indvuka iwakho umuthi hlale phasi kukhulumisana ngezinkinga.
Vele kuyadingeka ukuthi sihlaleni phansi sibomake nabobabe la singaboni ngeliso linye khona sibitele abadzala babe baseluleke singafiki esigabeni sokuthi singaze sibulalane ngoba elikakhulu ekhaya naningaboni ngeliso linye bakhona bemthetho nanibona ukuthi akulungi.
Liqinisa lithi emadoda abantu labangakhulumi isikhathi lesiningi kanti ukhandi ukuthi indoda iyacindezeleka la ekhaya kodwa ayikhulumi.
Kutawubita imali lengetulu kwetigidzi letisitfupha emalangeni kwakha kabusha libhloho lelincane lelakhiwako ngasesikolweni lesiphakeme saseMbabane Central. Kanti njini lo mkhulu wemgwaqo etiko letemsebenti lemikhulu nekutfutsa Vincent Dlamini uthi kuneluhlelo lwekuvala tigodzi letisemgwaqweni yelive loluchubekako eveni longake litawubita imali letigidzi letingemashumi emalangeni 50 million emalangeni.
Itiko letemisebenti lemikhulu nekutfutsa licale umsebenzi wokulungisa libhloho leliphansi ngasesikolweni lesiphakeme saseMbabane Central lapho kutawuphindze kufakwe khona kabusha litiyela. Njinela lomkhulu wemigwaco kuleli tiko Vincent Dlamini uthi lo msebenzi utawuthatha inyanga letisiphohlongo utawuphela ngenyanga yeNdlovana eminyakeni lotako.
Imali takhona ke dingetulu nje kancane kwa 6 million ngalezathu ukuthi kukhona lesitabe sikwenda ngale ngasejubukwele lokhu part of le project le nakhona la khona senweba libhloho la khona lebese senebungoti lokutsite kanzi nakhona lapha eCentral kutaba neoverlay yesikundiyela lapho sitakwenda khona sigaba lesingaba ngu 600 meters kusuka lapha na kule bypass utengalana towards Bokhozi khona.
Dlamini uthi kuleminye imisebenzi lelitiko lichuba umsebenzi wokuvala tigodzi letisemgwaqweni yelive.
Already nje sine contract leseyicalile kusebenza icale ngiyabona evikini leliphelile. Lo msebenzi ke loyo utawuthatha imali letinganga 50 million. Akusilo wasenhlangano kuphela umgwaqo. Ngiyo yonke lemigwaqo nje lenema potholes ifakile kuleyo program leyo. Lo contract utasendela asivalele letigodzi cishe live longana.
Kuqinisekisa ukuthi imigwaqo yelive ihlobile futhi iphephile lelitiko lichuba nemsebenzi wokuhesha eceleni kwemigwaqo nekukhanyisa yona imigwaqo yelive. Edindzabeni yeSwatini TV kubika Samkelsuwe khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini eMbabane.
Umcimbi wemlawula Camp Fire Festival lonyaka ungenelwe linani lelisetulu lebantfu labachamuka emaveni abomakhelwane. Kanti ke umphathi waleli bandla lelibuke kugcinwa kwemagugu elive Kusile Sikhosana uthi lo mcimbi uhlose kucokelela imali letawucondzana netinhlelo tekugcina imvelo kuletindzawo letivikele yona imvelo.
Lo mcimbi wemlawula Campfire wasungulelwa kucokelela timali letawukhona kutfutfukisa nekunakekela tindzawo letigcine imvelo. Lo mcimbi wamalanga lamathathu uphinze ukhuthade ukuthi bantfu bahlalisane kahle nemvelo. Umphathi welibandla lelibuke kongiwa kwemagugu elive Kusile Sikhosana uthi ke lo nyaka lo mcimbi ungenelwe bantfu labachamuka kulamanye emave.
It's a fundraising project yakhelwe specifically to enhance conservation measures eMlawula Nature Reserve. eMlawula Nature Reserve idzinga lokunengi in terms of managing of alien invasive species mosana nezwe kuphindze futhi kucontrolwe emahlathi ukuthi phela tinyamatane titakhona kuhamba freely kungaze kwene kakhulu atikabe tisakhona kuhamba tingasakhona nalokutalana kahle kuphindze kunciphe nalokudla kwato letikudlako. The mali lesiyiraisako la specifically is for doing that. Siphindze futhi umlawula unema communities nearby. Sifiso sethu singumsamo ukuthi labantu lesiphila nabo kuze bangatokuya kuyophocha kusasa kufuna ukuthi kube khona tinsita lesitendako singumsamo leti tawubasita nabo lesiye sithi alternative livelihood that will make them not to poach.
Lo mcimbi ungilomunye lokhanga ivakashi letibuya emhlabeni lokhambisana nemigomo welitiko letekuvakasha nendzaba temvelo wekukhanga ivakashi letawufaka imali lenganga 2 billion emalangeni emnotfweni welive kuphindze kunakekeleke nemvelo. Itindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni naThemba Shabangu eMlawula.
Kutemidlalo mengameli wenhlangano lengamele imidlalo yema-Olympics kanye nema-Commonwealth kuleli Adamu Mtsetfwa uthumisa bonke labangenele umfundza sikolwa wekuphatsa temidlalo lowatiwa nge-Sports Administration course wathi-ke kuyabonakala ukuthi bafisa kubona temidlalo tithutfuka lapha eveni. Mtsetfwa bekakhuluma nakavala ngalokusemtsetfweni lo mfundza sikolwa luthethe emalanga lamane Olymp Africa kalobamba. Kwalomuhla sibahlolet makethe sida ubuya sikhulumisane nemchumanisi wembube nesive Phindile Vilakati.
Lesi sikhathi lapho khona emaphoyisa agubha kuba khona kwawo eveni. Kulapho kukuthathwa khona sive ukuthi sike sihlale phansi sibuke bumcoka bemaphoyisa empilweni yebantfu. Siphindze sibuke tindlela letinsha tekuphepha kubo bonke bucala lobuveta sihloko. Sive sakangwane siyakhunjutwa ukuthi singawafaki emaphoyisa etinkulumeni tepolitiki ngoba liphoyisa alingeni futhi alingenelani nepolitiki. Emaphoyisa alwa nebucala netingoti temgwaco kuphela nje. Ingako emaphoyisa athi wonke umuntu eveni akahlale ngaphandle kwekunceneka ukuthi angahle ahlaselwe tilwane tasendle. Umuntu lohlala Eswatini akatiphilele atisebentele ngaphandle kwekwesaba kuhlaselwa kwemucwa nekucekelwa phansi kwembahla yakhe. Nawe wena lophathekile emaphoyisa athi digulele kahle uze uphile ngaphandle kwekuphatamiseka. Lokungenteka ngekuthi tidlova tingene tihlasele labo labakunakekelako kuleyo ndlu. Sive lesihlakaniphile nguleso lesiphakamisa kusebenta kwemaphoyisa nabo bonke labalwa nebucala. Ngale kwaloko timbungushe tiyawuwangenela emazinyane kungenamuntu ekhaya. Lo mlayeto niulethelwa ngemaphoyisa embube abambisene nomsakato wetithombe.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, to feel the rush of life overwhelm you, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. You ask, and we give you the royal experience. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. There are but a few places on earth so special, so unique, and so spectacular, where it becomes the rite of passage for the ambitious travelers, the courageous souls, to all have the one and only royal experience. That day when you look deep into your heart and leap into an ancient world so very different from your own, where magic, beauty, and love are shared forever. Then you will have a royal experience. There is just one place on earth where the people make you feel a part of their kingdom, where you just might volunteer to awaken spirits, enrich minds, and work alongside communities to build, motivate, and inspire. This is truly the royal experience. When you dream of a different world, beyond the ordinary, beyond time, discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Nene bekunene kusetandleni tesive kuthi imimango ingagcini kukampunzi edla emini. Sive sakangwane nebantu labakhethe kuhlala eSwatini abaphile ngekukhululeka nekuthi kubethe lo nyathelo lilungelo lalabanye egameni lekufuna lilungelo lakhe. Sive asikhumbule ukuthi emaphoyisa bomake nabobabe labatinikele kwenta siqiniseko ukuthi wonke umuntu lonempahla yakhe ingacekelwa phansi ngulomunye. Wonke umuntu akahlale ngekuthula nangaphandle kokwesaba tindwe letingatiwa. Emaphoyisa ngekulandzela nekushiqilela umthetho athi into yemuntu ayibe ngeyakhe umuntu. Sive asijinge siwabambise siphinde siwasekele emaphoyisa emsebentini wawo. Kude emalungelo aso sive osomabhizinisi kanye nebantu labasebentako anganyatheleki. Khona-ke imimango itawukwakha nemakhaya akhulise bantwana ngaso sandla lesiya emlonyeni. Emaphoyisa naso sive abasebente ngebudlelwane nangekubambisana kulwa nebucala netingoti temgwaco.
Siphinze sikwamukele ehlelweni kwanelo muhle sivedile ke nasicala lihlelo ukuthi sitawuchumana nemchumaniso wamaphoyisa embubene sive Superintendent Phindile Vilakati kubuka nje ukuthi tebucala simephi ekubulweni kule nyanga lesikuyo noma lesiyicedzako inyanga ya October. Phiko siyakwamukela ehlelweni sibuya enyangeni ya September lapho khona live belinemsebenzi omkhulu umsebenzi welikhetho. Sithena siucedza leyo msebenzi besolo sichumana nani nisinike ama-updates ekutheni lebucala nibulwa kanjani bucala. Kube inyanga lesingasho ukuthi ibe yinhle kakhulu endzabeni ukuthi bucala bebuncane kakhulu. Singena kuna October empeleni nje singasho ukuthi nakhona sesithi siyamphetha kungathi sekuvela tigameko letinengi letibhlungu letishacisa ligogo naleti siyathumala ngoba phela empeleni solo sithi hawo kungathi abantu sebayahamba ngelayini ekutheni bucala sibugweme. Kukhulumisana nawe nje usiphe nalesithombe sekuthe ukuthi kuna impela sonto lesibuya kuyo particularly sibona na story sa deputy sheriff siva tindzaba ukuthi sekunebantwana laba missing of course bo accident which can be quite inevitable ngakulolo hlangothi. Siphe nje sithombe Phiko endzabeni tebucala ukuthi nithini ngemaphoyisa sisive seMaswati.
Siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni, sibusele kuso sonke isive sakangwane ekseni. Sibonga nekuthola lithuba kulolu hlelo lolu yintsandvokati yalo live Kusile Breakfast Show. Lapho khona nathi singamaphoyisa njalo ngabomsombuluko siyasilethe wona umbiko ukuthi liviki noma impelasonto ihambe kanjani. Umuntu uyawucala ngokuchubeka nekujumisa sona sive kulandzela ukuthi imisebenzi soloyichubekile njalo sibonile ukuthi impelasonto beyinayo imicimbi lapha nalapha. Sive sikhombisile kusibambisa senda yona leyo misebenzi. Nekuhlonipha kakhulu umthetho walo live siyajumisa kuloko. Sesibuya-ke kuto tigigaba letentekile bekhona-ke tigigaba lapha nalapha kulandzela kokuthi phela vele sive sisachubeka nekuhamba kuyenteka bese kuba nato tingoti njengaloko siyakhumbula ukuthi sibe nayo ingoti yebhasi leyaphambalata emgwacweni yagcina ishayisa abantu kwathi labane bashiya emhlabeni kulabo lebe bahamba ngetinyawo. Siyawuthi madvudvu kuleto tihlobo nebangani nabo bonke nje labathinzeka ngokulahlekelwa kuleto tihlobo sithemba ukuthi umdali uyawubathuthuta abantu benkosi. Siphinzeke sabona tigigaba tekushona kwebantu etigigabeni letehlukahlukene lababulewe etandleni talabanye. Noko-ke ngekusebenta kwamaphoyisa atikhandla labo bomso labakhona emaphoyiseni kuyotiphendulela kulobo bucala. Kuthi teke lapha eshiseleni kaHlatsi salahlekelwa ngumfana leneminyaka lemibili budzala. Lokungicebo lenkhosi wakamkhwanazi wasemadolini nendzawo. Singachubeka sicele sive ukuthi sisiside nasembona lo mfana sishaye inombolo lethi 7606 6447 lekuyinombolo yalobuke emacala esifundzeni sakhona eshiselweni. Nanyalo-ke kuseni siyawuthembisa sive ukuthi vele sitawuphuma ngetinkhani siye khona emahlathini lapha kaHlatsi kuyolekelela ukuthi afune lo mfana. Singamema naso sive ukuthi sisibambise sisawenda lo msebenzi njengaloko sihlale sigcizelela ekutheni kusebenta kwethu simaphoyisa kuncike kakhulu kuso sive. Ngakulokunye-ke kuthi teyitolo ekuseni savuka nenhlekelele-ke bantfu labane bomake labashile emhlabeni emva kokudutshulwa yindvodza leneminyaka lengu-45 yobudzala lapha ezulwini kulelinye lemadolobhanyana lakhona kuyandzawo. Loku-ke kube sibhukule simatima. Siyabona ukuthi i-enga esiveni noma kubantu labaningi solovele isetulu ngetizatfu letehlukehlukene. Sichubeke-ke nekusincenga sive nekusinxusa ukuthi asifune tindlela tekudila netintfo lesibhekene nato. Siyasikhuthaza-ke ukuthi khona tinhlangano njengaboswaga kwakhaya indvodza naletinye lesingezicedze kutibala. Akhona nemasonto, akhona netibhedlela nangabe uyeva ukuthi ngathi ingcondo yakho seyifuna kucabanga ngendlela lehlukile. Kanjalo nakhona emaphoyiseni sinalo lihlelo lapho khona abantu singababukisa noma sibukisane. Nekuvuma-ke kwekuthi nangabe welulekwa umane uthathe leto teluleko letitfolako ungasebenzisi mhlawumbe indlela yocabanga ngayo ngoba indlela abantu lababona ngayo ngeke ifane nendlela lobona ngayo. Siyathembisa-ke ukuthi njengalokhu selicalile liviki etindzaweni letiningi siyabona ukuthi liyana litulu. Siyakhuthaza ukuthi sihlabe sikhona simaphoyisa siphindze sicele nabo bashayeli ukuthi timoto atibe ngesimeni lesisekahle siphindze sikhanyise sisahamba emgwaceni ukuze kuthi sibonakale. Sifisela wonke umuntu liviki lelihle nekuphepha sisachubeka nekuphila eveni. Siyabonga.
Nje sisengacedzi imphephethe uthinza yona indzaba yokuthi kunetinhlangano lelo satibalile bokwakha indvodza boswaga. We also have emasonto, even the family setting labangadlala inzima ekugwemeni bucala ekuthenini nje even how we socialize ourselves. Siyambona Swaga uveta indzaba ukuthi perhaps it's time ekuthenini likhona ngemaphoyisa but akuphindze-ke yona indzaba ye-gender based violence nekuhlukubetana ngaleli hlobo saloku declarishwa vele as a national emergency. Engabe ningibona lokho kungathi kunganisida yini vele ekutheni sisalwa nabo lobucala kungathi bungancipha vele?
Siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni umbuto wakho. Thina njengamaphoyisa sihlala we play a neutral line or a way of living. Thina either something is declared or not declared. We solely depend on statistics noma tinombolo lesitibonako. Siphindze sibuke nakuma causes. So thina we will never stop. Thina sivele sihamba ngathi egagasini lesetulu ngaso sonke isikhathi because to us every record in a single day means something. Kuyasishukume kuyasimotivate ukuthi sichubeke nekusebenta nasisabona tintfo tenteka. Mina ngathi nakudo tinhlangano whether declared or not declared, siyacela ukuthi wonke umuntu asukume. Each life means a lot. Asukume kube ne-role la edlalako. Kakhulukazi nayilo ithinzile emngoni yema-families. We really invite ema-families ukuthi asibambise sisenda le tinfo leti. Some of these things tendeka because kukhona tinfo lesingatendi kahle noma lesithi omithile ekuphileni lokugcina kusilidela ekutheni bantu babe nema-anger issues. So lena yendzaba velele kufuna siyisukumele sisonke kungasiyo ama-organizations kuphela, kungasiyo amaphoyisa, kungasiyo nemasonto, but everyone who lives in this world kuyabida ukuthi abe nensayeya yekubambisana nalo live kulwa nendzaba yekuhlukubetana noma ngaluphi ihlobo.
Phiko sinibonile ngelikhetho niphumile vele nisebenza nje mbamba impela futhi sibonile ukuthi kube nema results lamahle kakhulu ekupheleni kwalo likhetho outside of ama results elikhetho etindzabeni tetebucala sibonile ukuthi ngathi kubebede tindzabale tibhlungu kakhulu lesitivile lesingasho ukuthi betibucala sibuka ke nakumsebenzi lokuqala ke msombuluka evikini leliphelile umsebenzi wesibaya sive silo semhlaba ingonyama iveta indzaba ke ukuthi sibonile live libane period la khona bekungasiko mnanzi alluding to the civil unrest Phiko indzaba ke lebe seyangena ku agenda solo kunje yakhulunyiswa esibayeni vikini lonke lesibuya kulo leliphelile ekutheneni nemaswati aonke as much as amaphoyisa adlala indzima lenkulu ekulweni nabo obucala nokuthi ke live lihlale nje lingilelo lelinekuthula emaswati aqhuqutelwe ukuthi nawo ake aye lapha ke embila ophakamisa ukuthi silive sonke individually singadlala nzima yini ekutheni kube bethe tigameko letifana naleti ngabe kusho ukuthini lokho nje kini ningemaphoyisa ekutheni nesilo semhlaba kungathi singakhutsata sive nokuthi sive siye lapha embili siyotibekela ekutheni singabambisa kanjani to maintain peace. That's the first one. Kwesibili sibuka sona nje sibaya sesibona ngathi sesisondzela ngasemaphethelweni lokho singeke sigagule vele ukuthi sitawuphela nini siyabona ukuthi sesihambile 5 days singenela ngeni les6 lomuhla ekseni sibona nakhona kungathi kune peace kakhulu besolo sinibona impela nje nasithi siphonsa tinsambe esigodlweni bantu basangena esibayeni siyayisibone la entrance ngathi kuba nemaphoyisa. There's a lot of police presence. Talk to us about the importance of ukuthi nani nibonakale ngalolu hlobo.
Siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni. Umuntu angacela ngakusho ukuthi umthetho walelive usigonyatile kwe-Constitution section 189 wasiniketa i-responsibility yekwenta siciniseko sekuthi sipreserva i-peace even si-protecta sive ngayo yonke indlela siphinde siprevente kwenteka kwamacala siyachubeka-ke kuto tonke tinhlangothi ngayo yonke indlela si-consider nokuthi tikhathi tiyashintsha so nathi we make sure ukuthi we fully capacitate the officers abekule level lefanele lesikhathi lesikuso. And we highly appreciate noma ngingasilo ongakanani but siyadumisa lokho ukuthi sive sisithole lelithuba lethi siphefumule because we understand ukuthi letinye tinfo letigcina tilidela ku stress tiyabanga ukuthi bantu babe nekucinzeteleka bangakhona ukuphefumula. So we believe ukuthi le exercise itasisita sive nalama anger issues atawehla ngoba umuntu nasakhonile ku voice out i-feeling yakhe uyaye bese uba nayo le hope yokuthi kutawusolveka. So we so much appreciate siphinde si-appreciate kakhulu yona inhlonipho lesiyibonako i-displaywa ngiso sive. Sometimes ema-orders lesiwakhokhako simaphoyisa noma ama-instructions akabi ngila ehla kahle. For instance, if we tell you not to move this way or drive that way or rather walk kuleyo ndlela kanti wena bosoticha sotawufika la uyakhona, that can affect you and that can challenge ema-emotions akho in a way. But we are saying sive sinekubeketela kakhulu sisachubeka naloko. Siyawukhumbula nje kakhulu kade ngelanga lekucala lapho bekuthiwa akungeni mhlambe emanti lapha ngekhathi akungeni lokho kudla. But people were so cooperative bathatha konke lesikushoko. So we appreciate nalendlela mhlambe labati expressa ngato kuyakhombisa ukuthi inhlonipho ikhona. So thina singemaphoyisa siyakubonga kakhulu lokho siyakudumisa siphinde sichubeke nekuthembisa live ukuthi sitawuchubeka sente konke lokusemandleni ukuthi kuthula kuba khona kulesinye isikhathi nasisakwenda lokho vele lomunye utawucinzeteleka sicolise ngaloko kusuke kungilomsebenzi kusuke ngasinto le personal. Siyacela ukuthi sive sichubeke nokusibambisa simaphoyisa sisenda yona imisebenzi.
Encenye nje as a parting question Pico utsinze yona indzaba ukuthi ningamaphoyisa nisebenza kakhulu ngetinombolo nema statistics sivala na inyanga ke ya October sizabe singena ku November empeleni singena ku festive season sitanibona kakhulu kenyalo nisebenza kakhulu tindzaba te awareness nekuthi nje nicapacitate siva sibuke nje nang October mabomu Pico nisatsinza yona indzaba ekusebenza ngetinombolo engabe are you happy with the way bucala lobehle ngakhona noma bunyukile particularly kunendzaba ukuthi siyanibona la mgwaqweni kakhulu man ikakhulu ngempela sonto ngoba siyathi behavior yesive iyashintsha vele ngempela sonto kuseseba khona laba sebenzisa nelibhodlela engabe tindzaba tabo drink and driving tindzaba lentibone tehlayini kulenyanga sisangena kuyo nje vele i-festive season.
Siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni. I might not have ama statistics in front of me right now, but ke ngisho ukuthi cishe nasibuka kuletinye taletinfo njengama murder cases lebe lately bese aqhamuka on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday sibonile a little drop as isibebede leswa recordako. It is unfortunate ukuthi sometimes nasathaya aqhamuka in big numbers like we did experience the previous weekend, but ke will not say lokho sekusho ukuthi sekuhlulekekile yini konke. Kungaba nkonje ukuthi vele lesikhathi lesingena kuso nazo sinawo ama challenges lesibhekana nawo. Umuntu angacala ngakho nje ukukhumbuta kakhulu tinhlangano ema associations lothola ukuthi lesiwabita ngathi stokvel labeka imali. Avamisile kuba nama scenarios of interest kuleti cards lethu uthola ukuthi it's either sekusheta indlu noma abantu sebalahlekelwe imali sebagcekezela. Siyaye sikhumbute ke sive ukuthi vele the safer places to keep money ngemabhange asichubeke siwasebenzise kakhulu kuze kuthi imali yethu itoba safe. Siphinde sithi nathi siya volunteer simaphoyisa though asik-encourage kakhulu because even tisefo lesinato thina tahulumende, but ke nangabe sekune situation leseyima extremes you can run to the nearest police station for assistance. Si encourage nalabo ke lekutawubita ukuthi batikhokhe leti mali ukuthi vele abangakhokhi imali enkulu umuntu angawabikele amaphoyisa ukuthi amane am-advise noma amphekeletele if there's a necessity. Lokunye ke lokuyaye kuvele kakhulu kati kuleti cards leti kuba ngoma armed robberies. So siya encourage abosomabhizinisi ukuthi imali adingahlali la etitolo neti-cards tekuyoseva leti mali asitende tibe tehlukane bangakumastarishi ukuthi wena njalo nga-3 uyofaka imali ebhange because lokhu sekutawenda ukuthi bakhone kuku-attacka izimo. Nekuthi ke vele asibe very close to lama police stations. Let us know our station commanders because nasekubhizi sometimes when you call 999 uthola ukuthi sekune line awusakhona ingena, but if you know your station commander, you know the numbers, you know at police station landline, uyamati desk officer, uyamati regional commissioner wale area lophila kuyo kutawenda kusindwe tibe easy. Otherwise sitabe sikhona sitawuphuma nathi ngayo yonke indlela kukhumbuta sona sivethe indzaweni ehlukehlukene vele ema patrols nema roadblocks atoba severe during such times. So we encourage nokuthi si-adjust nasetikhathini tethu sisenda ema-movements kuze kuthi singade khanzi sibambeleleka.
Chief Pico, thank you so much for your time lomuhla ekseni. Siyabonga kakhulu. Bongo sibe kuyeke phindile vila kade umxhumanisi wemaphoyisa embube nesive. Usipha leyo report le very comprehensive. Siyabonga nje nokuthi uyasikhumbuta sive so ukuthi angeke bashayele 999 kuphela. Kodwa inombolo dabo desk officer nabo station commander they should have that on their disposal. Ekutheni sisalwa nebucala buchubeke vele bunciphe ngalendlela la vete ngayo ukuthi empeleni nako October babonile ngasithi nombolo diyancipha lokusinika ke nathi imotivation nengakhulu bonke sasibahlala emarket sidabuya sichubeke nehlelo.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Why is sexuality education important for our overall health? When, how, and by whom should it be provided? If you've grappled with these questions as a parent, a teacher, a grown-up, or a young person, Dr. Venkataraman Chandramouli is here with some answers. Welcome, Chandra. Chandra, talk to us about why sexuality education is important.
Thank you, Vismita. To answer your question, let me talk about what a 9-year-old girl needs every day to go to school and to come home safely. She needs information and skills, and when, where, and how to cross the road. She needs a safe and supportive environment, a pedestrian crossing, traffic lights that work, drivers who respect their rules or are punished if they don't respect those rules, or an adult to help her cross the road if the traffic is chaotic. She may need health and counseling services if she's struck as she's crossing the road. So children and adolescents need this package of actions to cross the road every day to go to school and come home safely and with growing autonomy. They need similar packages of actions for other health issues, including sexual and reproductive health. And that's really what sexuality education is about. It aims to improve knowledge and understanding. It aims to improve positive and pro-social attitudes and norms. So overall, sexuality education is intended to prepare children and adolescents for the sexual and reproductive lives, healthy lives, and satisfying and happy lives as well. But the sad reality in many parts of the world is that children and adolescents don't get the sexuality education they need. And the consequences of that are apparent. Adolescents are unaware about the changes in their bodies and minds at the time of puberty. Many adolescents are unprepared to avoid sexually transmitted infections or pregnancies when they start to have sexual activity. Adolescents cannot get sexuality education from a parent, a teacher, or another adult. On the other hand, they can get misinformation from friends, from the media, and from social media. It's easier to get hardcore pornography than a clear answer from a parent.
So, Chandra, you've convinced me that sexuality education is important, but what is the evidence that it actually contributes to overall health?
A synthesis of 64 studies of school-based sexuality education programs showed that students who had received sexuality education were significantly more likely to have higher levels of knowledge and understanding about HIV, higher levels of self-efficacy to refuse unwanted sex, higher levels of condom use when they had sex, lower numbers of sexual partners, and delayed sexual initiation. So clearly, there are benefits. Is there any evidence that sexuality education, in fact, harms children and adolescents? A synthesis of 87 studies sought to answer 3 questions. Does sexuality education lead to early sexual activity, to more sexual partners, and to more sexual risk-taking? And not one study showed that it contributed to early initiation. A survey in 2017 in the Netherlands showed that students who had experienced sexuality education reported that they were much less likely to have sex early, between the ages of 12 and 14, than their counterparts 5 years ago. Moreover, they reported that they were much more likely to use contraceptives when they first had sex, much less likely to have coerced sex. The evidence is very clear. Sexuality education is effective, period.
So, Chandra, talk to us about when, how, and by whom should sexuality education be provided?
Sexuality education should begin early. It should be provided on an ongoing basis, not a one-off. It should take into account age, development, and of course, it should be cognizant of the social and cultural context. But that doesn't mean it should be watered down. For a 5-year-old, it can mean teaching them about the names of body parts, including the genitals, without hesitation and without shame. For 9 and 10-year-olds, it could mean teaching them about puberty changes in their bodies and minds. And for 15-year-olds, it could mean teaching them how to avoid sexual and reproductive health problems when they start having sexual activity. And for all ages, what is very important is to teach them that it is extremely important to respect the choices and decisions of others and to insist that others respect their choices. Consent. And that's something we have to begin very early. A sexuality education should be provided with proven evidence-based criteria, and ideally it should be delivered at home, at school, and elsewhere in the community. There's a wonderful African proverb which captures this idea. It takes a village to raise a child.
Thank you, Chandra. There you have it. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
We have revised our forecast, and this revision includes a substantial but not entirely surprising downgrade to our estimate of world merchandise trade growth this year, lowering it to 0.8% from 1.7% in our April forecast. Several factors combined to dampen trade growth in the first half of 2023. These include persistent inflation and high interest rates in advanced economies such as the United States and the EU, a weaker than expected rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic in China, and continuing aftershocks from the war in Ukraine. The outlook for 2024 has not been downgraded and remains relatively strong. We anticipate a rebound in the volume of merchandise trade, projecting a growth rate of 3.3%, slightly higher than our previous estimate of 3.2%. This growth should be driven by increased trade in goods closely linked to the business cycle, such as machinery and consumer durables, which tend to rebound when economic growth stabilizes. One interesting statistic is the share of intermediate goods in world trade, which provides an indication of the health and extent of global supply chains. This share fell to 48.5% in the first half of 2023, compared to an average of 51.0% over the previous 3 years. This suggests that supply chains might be contracting, but it could also simply reflect higher commodity prices. While we see first signs of fragmentation, there's still no evidence of any broad-based deglobalization.
There has been some concern that slower Chinese growth might weigh down world trade through weaker import demand. This might happen if China's economic slowdown worsens, but so far this has not been the case. China actually contributed 0.3 percentage points to trade volume growth in the first half of 2023, while the US and EU respectively subtracted 0.6 and 0.5 percentage points. Trade in manufacturers overall is down 4%, while services is providing some lift to global trade. It was up 9% in the first quarter.
We at Eswatini Television Authority are committed to observing the Eswatini Communication Commission's Broadcasting Code of Conduct.
Under the code, we are committed to broadcast news that is current, free from hate speech, accurate, balanced, and fair.
From politics to business, health, agriculture, courts, and global news, we bring you the latest updates as they happen, when they happen.
We cover all the sporting codes from the football pitch to the chessboards.
This is Eswatini TV News.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at our international news. Hamas spokesperson Ghazi Hamad on Saturday called on the international community to allow humanitarian aid to reach Gaza from Egypt, specifically medical equipment and fuel, as he spoke to reporters in Beirut.
Explosions and rockets brightened the sky above Gaza Saturday night. In the evening, smoke rose from a burning building. These are among the few images coming from the continued bombardment and ground invasion of Gaza. Israel is endeavoring to destroy the military capabilities of Hamas and bring back hostages.
We are doing everything possible to be able to bring back the people taken away from us, return them to our country. It's very complicated. We need to face a reality that we have not known up until now.
Hamas said it will release the hostages it seized 3 weeks ago if Israel agrees to release all Palestinian prisoners in its jails. Israeli videos showed columns of armored vehicles moving slowly in open, sandy areas of Gaza, the first confirmation of ground troops. For its part, Hamas said it was uniting Palestinian militant groups in Gaza for a protracted ground battle.
Gaza will be strong, will see more resilience in our people in Gaza. The occupation will lose more and more in Gaza Strip. I think he will achieve nothing on the ground.
On Friday, the United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly for a humanitarian truce in the conflict, which neither side has shown signs of heeding. Despite the continuing battles, Hamad called on the international community to allow humanitarian aid to reach Gaza from Egypt, specifically medical equipment and fuel.
And as Israel continues to carry out airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, residents are increasingly struggling to find shelter.
After another day and night of strikes raining down on Gaza, volunteer crews perform the daily desperate search for people under the rubble.
Every day we see the same thing. Children under 2 or 3 years old, some babies 1 or 2 months old, women in their 60s, people over 50. So where are the fighters they are targeting? These are safe houses where babies are kept who haven't even lived yet.
Now Israel says the war has entered a second stage.
Overnight, we increased the entry of Israeli forces into the Gaza Strip, and they joined the forces already fighting there. We're gradually expanding the ground activity.
Israel is again telling Gazans to go south for their own safety, but the south has not been spared from the strikes. People here are living in fear and uncertainty, heightened by a communications blackout.
We could just hear bombings and airstrikes, but we had no idea where are these bombings. It was really devastating and really painful.
After 2 days in the dark, communications are now gradually being restored, but other essential resources, food, water, fuel, are perilously scarce. The UN and NGOs are repeating their warnings of a humanitarian catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of people are packed into camps and UN schools that cannot cope with the numbers.
Because of the overcrowding, we are starting to see serious public health risks. Some mothers are telling us they now dream of bathing their children.
The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross said she was shocked by what she called the intolerable level of human suffering in Gaza, and said it was unacceptable that civilians have no safe place to go.
And as Israel continued expanding its military operations in Gaza, the United States reiterated its calls for the protection of innocent human life. Separately, a United States military expert warns that Israel's mission to destroy Hamas could prove almost impossible.
Israel Defense Forces underscored Sunday that the militant group Hamas, and not the people of Gaza, is the target of their military operations, which have now been expanded. But as more reports and footage emerge showing extensive damage in civilian areas, Israel's approach and the support the United States is giving it continues to receive scrutiny. Appearing on ABC's This Week, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reaffirmed the U.S. position on the matter.
What we are providing to Israel is subject to the laws of war and to the requirements that steps be taken to protect innocent life. Those are requirements we impose anytime we transfer weapons to another country.
Some relatives of the hostages taken by Hamas during its October 7th terror attack on Israel have expressed worries that the ground offensive could put those kidnapped at risk. But Sullivan added that there are several ongoing efforts to get them home safely.
We are prepared to support humanitarian pauses so that hostages can get out safely, and we will keep working at that every day.
The war to destroy Hamas was deemed a, quote, nearly impossible mission that could take months, according to retired Army General Robert Abrams, who also granted an interview to ABC.
The defense that Hamas will put up in that very dense urban terrain, unlike anything that we've seen in recent years, is going to require some very fierce fighting, and simultaneously trying to ensure that the Israelis do not target unwittingly the locations of the hostages.
General Abrams also elaborated on the matters that would need to be addressed after the military conflict comes to an end.
Hamas was created as a result of a lack of a separate Palestinian state, a two-state solution, as many people have talked about. That has to be somewhere. When you ask, how does this end? That has to be part of the equation.
In the meantime, the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees voiced worry Sunday that people storming its Gaza aid warehouses is a sign that civil order is starting to break down. The warning came as Pope Francis renewed calls for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of the hostages, many of whom are believed to have dual nationalities.
The European Union called for pauses in the war between Israel and Hamas to allow aid into the Gaza Strip following a summit in Brussels. The bloc also discussed further aid for Ukraine as Kyiv fights Russia's invasion.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrations were held Thursday outside the two-day European Union summit in Brussels. Across Europe, both pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protesters have demanded stronger support from the EU. Europe has backed Israel to defend itself in line with international law following the October 7th cross-border attack by Hamas militants. But the conflict has exposed internal divisions in the bloc as the Palestinian death toll continues to grow. After several hours of talks, the leaders agreed on a statement calling for more aid to be let into the Gaza Strip, including pauses in the fighting.
The aid needs to reach Gaza unhindered and quickly.
The wording of the statement is seen as significant, says analyst Ian Bond.
They seem to have spent a long time arguing about whether there should be a pause for humanitarian purposes or pauses. A lot of people apparently thought that the former sounded a bit too close to a ceasefire, which they didn't want to call for.
The EU called for renewed focus on a two-state solution to the Middle East conflict.
We also decided to affirm the European Union's wish to support the principle of an international peace conference, which should be able to take place soon.
Israel's bombardment of Hamas targets is continuing, and the EU statement is unlikely to have a big impact, says Bond.
The reality in any case is that the EU's influence over Israel in particular has been quite limited for quite a long time.
The European Union also discussed a further 4-year, $53 billion support package for Ukraine as it fights Russia's invasion, but final agreement is not expected until December. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a long-time critic of Western assistance to Ukraine, and Slovakia's newly elected Prime Minister Robert Fico raised concerns, but did not reject the aid package outright.
If we don't stop Putin in Ukraine, he won't stop there. So it is a threat to all of us.
Most EU states strongly support the continuation of military and financial assistance to Kyiv, says analyst Ian Bond.
And supportive of Ukraine's ambitions to become a member of the European Union and to start accession negotiations probably in the new year.
Meanwhile, Serbia's president held meetings with EU leaders on the sidelines of the summit, as Brussels also attempts to de-escalate tensions between Serbia and Kosovo.
In the Mexican resort town of Acapulco, a desperate dash of basic needs is underway in the days since Hurricane Otis slammed ashore. The strength of the storm caught forecasters by surprise as area residents now seek food, fuel, and water to survive.
Police arrive at a gas station in Acapulco, Mexico at the scene of reported looting. Residents of this resort town screaming back at police as one man chants, "We are not stealing. We want gas. You are the robbers." The lack of basic needs follows the landfall of Hurricane Otis last week. In just 12 hours' time, Otis more than doubled strength from 113 to 257 kilometers per hour. Otis ultimately peaked at the strongest hurricane classification as a Category 5 storm. A hurricane with intensity that caught forecasters by surprise. National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan says that was because the storm found a much more favorable environment than anticipated, in part due to warmer waters, a result of climate change, and winds moving at just the right altitude and direction. The storm's damage created a desperate situation for many living in Acapulco. Scenes of widespread looting, from bare essentials like food and diapers to higher-end items like flat-screen TVs. Addressing reporters on Friday, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said nature the creator protected Mexico despite the hurricane's fury, adding fatalities appeared to be not so many. As of Sunday morning, the death toll is 39. For its part, the Mexican government responded by deploying the military to serve meals while medical personnel deliver care from makeshift clinics. Forecasters say the East Pacific lacks much of the hurricane-predicting infrastructure seen around the Atlantic coast of the United States. They say without buoys, robust land observation, and radars along the coast, they rely almost exclusively on satellite imagery, saying that leaves them with a jigsaw puzzle and only 10% of the pieces. For those living in a hurricane's path, that means little warning of what's to come.
For a president who campaigned on ending forever wars, Joe Biden now faces a conflict in Gaza on top of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and rising Sino-United States tensions over Taiwan. How he handles these challenges may impact his re-election bid in 2024.
Amid mounting Palestinian deaths from Israeli airstrikes that the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says have surpassed 7,000. This comment from U.S. President Joe Biden.
I have no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war.
The statement angered American Arabs, Muslims, and others already protesting Biden's handling of the war in Gaza.
This is shocking and dehumanizing. Would the president feel better if 1,000 Palestinian children had died?
Progressives are also angry. 9 members of Congress, mostly from the progressive wing of Biden's Democratic Party, voted against a resolution backing Israel and condemning Hamas because it did not mourn the loss of Palestinian lives or mention the two-state solution. Various polls show more Americans sympathize with Israelis than with the Palestinians, though younger Americans are more divided.
With American Jews, a very important group in terms of votes and also contributions to the Democratic Party, there's been almost universal praise for President Biden and the way he's handled this.
Republicans in Congress are increasingly skeptical of Biden's commitment to fund foreign wars, including newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson, who is against sending more money to Ukraine without conditions, but is sympathetic to Israel.
The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done.
The share of voters who approve of Biden's handling of the issue has increased by 9 percentage points since the days immediately following Hamas' attack on Israel. How the war in Gaza will impact Biden's re-election bid in 2024 will depend on whether the conflict can be contained. In neighboring Lebanon, cross-border attacks have intensified between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah.
If we get involved directly in these forever wars, yes, Biden will suffer. As long as he keeps American troops out of the line of fire, I don't think it will be nearly as controversial, and I don't think it will be a major factor in people's votes.
Sabato added another key factor, whether Palestinian deaths can be minimized and humanitarian aid delivered.
For many Ukrainians, Hamas' October 7 assault on Israeli civilians bears stark similarities to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year. Amid fears that the Israeli-Gaza war will distract the world's attention from their own ordeal, Ukraine's Jewish community leaders and politicians are hoping the United States will continue to back both Israel and the Ukraine.
In this, one of the oldest synagogues in the center of Kyiv, military chaplains from different faiths came together for supper. At the dinner table, they discussed the challenges of war. Having been on the front line of the Russian-Ukrainian war since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, they see many parallels between their fight and the recent attack on Israel by Hamas militants. Rabbi David Millman explains the origin of the Israeli-Hamas conflict to his colleagues. He says he was shocked by the attack.
First, I was horrified. My kids are there. My grandkids are there. Then I could not understand how this was possible. We did not expect anything like this. We were expecting Hezbollah, Iran, but Hamas? Compared to Hezbollah and Iran, they are just pocket bandits. The intelligence did not pay enough attention to them.
As Millman sees it, the Russian assault on Ukraine and the Hamas attack on Israel followed the same playbook. He said Hamas could not have carried out this attack without serious help and planning from outside. He suspects Russia, although he says he has no evidence. Rabbi Millman shows us President Volodymyr Zelensky's chair together with the Israeli ambassador's chair in the front row of this synagogue. Millman has two homelands, Ukraine and Israel, and he feels both countries need support to combat aggression. Igor Semyovolos, executive director at Ukraine's Association of Middle East Studies, says both wars involve the same enemies of democracy.
On the strategic level, there is no doubt that Russia and Iran are involved. And since Iran and Russia are our enemies, it can't fail to affect our conflict. It's becoming more global. According to Joe Biden, it is part of the world confrontation between democracies and autocracies, and we feel its effect on Ukraine.
Ivana Klimpush-Tsentsadze, the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Integration of Ukraine to the EU, says many Ukrainians see the attack on Israel as part of the same war that Ukraine is fighting. She supports President Biden's approach of combining an aid package for Ukraine and Israel.
As far as I understand, considering all the nuances of the American politics right now, internal politics, this is a very smart approach in explaining to American public what the American people should stand up against in supporting both Israel and Ukraine.
Ukraine has significance for many Jewish people. Past Israeli leaders, Golda Meir and Ariel Sharon, had roots in the country. And Millman says many Jewish religious figures are buried here. He says he prays daily for both lands to be supported in their fight for survival.
The United States and China stopped just short of announcing an anticipated meeting between their leaders in November on the margins of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. Two senior United States officials said this.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Washington, the first such face-to-face dialogue in recent years. On Friday, U.S. President Joe Biden met with Wang to underscore the need to manage U.S.-China competition responsibly. Officials from the two countries discussed a range of issues, including Israel's war with Hamas, Russia's war on Ukraine, the fentanyl crisis, and the South China Sea. Washington has called on China to use its influence over Iran to prevent a Middle East escalation.
We know China has relationships with a number of countries in the region, and we would urge them to use those relationships, the lines of communications they have, to urge calm and stability. We don't think that increased stability benefits the United States. It doesn't benefit China. It certainly doesn't benefit the people of the region.
For his part, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang said China is willing to cooperate with the United States to manage differences.
China and the United States need to have dialogue. Not only should we resume dialogue, the dialogue should be in-depth and comprehensive, so that with dialogue we can increase mutual understanding, reduce misunderstanding and misjudgment.
But some U.S. lawmakers question China's continuing alignment with Russia and Iran.
It should be a wake-up call to the West. Increasingly, it looks like we have an axis of authoritarian powers that are arrayed against our interests and those of our allies. China is the dominant player in this partnership. Vladimir Putin is a junior partner. But increasingly, there's collaboration with Iran.
During the talks with Wang, Biden and Blinken also expressed condolences on the passing of China's former Premier Li Keqiang, who died earlier on Friday.
Britain's King Charles III begins a tour of Kenya on Tuesday to address what Buckingham Palace describes as painful aspects of Britain's colonial past with the East African nation. He'll also discuss the climate crisis and national security issues.
King Charles III and his wife, Queen Camilla, held a reception with members of the Kenyan diaspora at Buckingham Palace prior to the state visit to the East African country. This will be the third foreign trip for the royal couple since Charles became king a little more than a year ago, and their first to Africa. Kenya holds symbolic significance for Charles' family because of what it represented for his late mother.
Kenya is where the Queen's reign, Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles's mother, it's where her reign began. She learned that her father died in Kenya. And somewhat conversely, although the post-independence period has had its ups and downs, the UK and Kenya have maintained some very close ties.
Olivia O'Sullivan says there are many shared priorities between the two governments.
There are ties between their militaries. They share military training on occasion. There's more recently, the UK has kind of sought to position itself as a bit of a leader in tackling climate change, particularly the last COP, which the UK hosted in Glasgow. And Kenya too, President Ruto in particular, has sought a leading voice and a leadership role on climate change.
King Charles and President William Ruto are expected to discuss the climate crisis, the importance of conservation efforts, and working together on national security, the King's Deputy Private Secretary, Chris Fitzgerald, said earlier this month. This trip comes as the African nation celebrates 60 years of independence from Britain.
If we're to look back with the benefit of retrospect, we would say that the history that's shared between Kenya and the United Kingdom, in the very first part, is a very violent kind of memory.
Javas Bigambo recalls Kenya's hard-fought struggle against British colonialism.
There was the issue of picking up or taking up the land of the locals when Kenya was British protectorate from 1901. Through the time of the struggle for independence, the Mau Mau struggle, where a number of Kenyans suffered in the hands of the British.
10 years ago, Britain apologized and agreed to pay compensation to thousands of veterans of the Mau Mau nationalist uprising in Kenya, which was brutally suppressed by the British colonial government in the 1950s. The Kenya Human Rights Commission estimated that 90,000 Kenyans were killed and 160,000 detained. In Kenya, Mau Mau veterans and campaigners welcomed the apology at the time, but said the compensation of about $3,500 per victim was not enough for the pain, suffering, and long-term effects the community endured. King Charles will spend 4 days in Kenya, 2 in Nairobi and 2 in the coastal city of Mombasa. While in Nairobi, he'll meet with President Ruto, tour the Uhuru Gardens, and attend a banquet at the State House, among many other planned activities.
And on sad news, Matthew Perry, troubled star of the smash hit TV sitcom Friends, was found dead at his home in Los Angeles on Saturday. United States media reported he was 54. First responders found Perry unconscious in a hot tub at his house and were unable to revive him, law enforcement sources told the Los Angeles Times.
Would you like some gum?
To millions of fans across the world, he was Chandler Bing, the wisecracking neighbor and roommate on Friends.
That is so not the opposite of taking somebody's underwear. Look at me. I'm Chandler. Could I be wearing any more clothes?
The NBC sitcom made Matthew Perry and his fellow castmates superstars. The comedy, which premiered in 1994 and ran for a decade, featured the lives and loves of 6 friends navigating New York City. The series finale was the most watched TV episode, reaching over 52 million viewers in the U.S. Fans say they're heartbroken over Perry's death.
My favorite line, "Can it be any weirder?" All those are amazing, and that will always be with me. I spend a lot of time watching the show and growing up with the show, and he's an integral part of the flow of the show.
He just always got the laughs, you know. So it's very sad. He will be missed, and I like to watch the reruns of the shows all the time, and so even more so now to be able to remember him.
But behind the fame and the success, Perry struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol, a journey he recounted in his 2022 memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Perry also starred in several films, including The Whole Nine Yards with Bruce Willis and the romantic comedy Fools Rush In with Salma Hayek, before returning to the small screen in a reboot of The Odd Couple that only lasted 3 seasons. Friends and co-stars have been sharing stories and paying tribute to Perry on social media. But for many, he will forever remain the slightly awkward, sarcastic Chandler Bing.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry now.
It's 20 minutes after 7. Let's go for a net break. We return with our sports news from the weekend with Linda Master-Lamini.
Hello and welcome to Eswatini TV and to a brand new talk show called A Cuppa with Nom Gable. And and I do what I have to do because I know where I'm going. All 5 of my mothers have inspired me.
So the addiction didn't happen then. It happened again another 8 years later. But that's where it started.
Choices I made at the time were not the best choices for myself.
I understand how a person can lose their mind in terms of life experiences.
That's what it looks like, and I like that. But you know what? The journey to my success is never a straight line.
Yeah, people are on the net now, and that's where we'd like to catch them with such shows.
Ngosekabanxe yendlula ngemzuzu munye insimbi yesikhombisa semukele Linda Master Dlamini ukhulumisa temidlalo lesitibonile kule mphela sonto. Njengenjalo ke sitaqala sibuke nje ibhola yalapha ekhaya. Nkosi sikuvusele sikwamukele ehlelweni. Very good morning. MTN Premier League sibuya kuyo kule mphela sonto sijika nje kuyo sivale imphela sonto imadlenya solo ke hamba embili size sitawubuka emagame latawuba khona empeleni sesiwabonile Seabeds neSwallows Sundowns neHighlanders cishe nje manengana ekabe nje impression yakho singangeni kule diko overall are you happy with the state of football?
Bingelele Sifiso ngibingelele naye umbukelo weSwatini TV loyal viewer. Ngicabanga ukuthi nawukhuluma ngeMTN Premier League Sifiso ubuka onke lama team sibuka nje overall nalama games ladlalile kuyakhombisa ukuthi cha ema games asadlaliwe kuyakhombisa ukuthi ema teams ayati elungiselela kuyakhombisa ukuthi badlali bayatimisela kulamanye amaqembu. Yes, kulamanye nawuthi usabukela lo first 20 minutes kuba betelo lokubukelako angati badlali ngenteka kube baphutha kucharger kanzi basuka umaphile phela labanye angiyahle umapho maybe kumele ithase a bit longer but incumbi yawo kile ngwabukele this weekend aqale phasi kakhulu maybe nalokuthi iweather bekumakhata kakhulu bekubanza so ngicabanga ukuthi overall angikhali kakhulu because amagoli ashayiwe yes kulamanye ama fixtures ubonile lokuthi ahlulekile ama teams kukora iLovo versus Singizino Spurs 0-0 but kulalamanye emadlenya nayo ihlulekile kukora but ku Rangers yes angathi lama teams asishisela noma ngi2 this weekend ahlulekile kukora kodwa nje overall angikhali kakhulu.
Yeah. Silivalela liviki imadlenya at the top of the log standing sengadliwa ngisho kanye ingadrawing ngisho kanye. Siyabona bese joina yona iGreen Mamba neRoyal Leopards enzabeni ukuthi nabo sebadrawile but here's the difference. Madlenya still hasn't lost unlike the two other teams lokuyi Green Mamba neRoyal Leopards. Sithini ke nasibuka imiphumela yawo lama team lamabili particularly yona ke iRoyal Leopard nayo iGreen Mamba. I do see ukuthi maybe siqale ngembabane Swallows neSeabeds ngoba singene ngayo ku week 6 1-0 victory for Mbabane Swallows. Engabe usho nindzabe ukuthi siwabonile wona emagoli but akusiwo lawa leswabonile kulama weekend lamanye lendlulile bo 1-0 okay maybe bo labo 2-0 bavela velile but Swallows versus Seabeds score lesibo sikatsile.
Bengingakasikhathi Sifiso nawubuka lamaqembu cishe iManzini Seabeds yes ibuya kumadlenya kothola emagoli lamane Mbabane Swallows on the other side nawibuka cishe banabo labadlali bongagatsa ukuthi at least lokungenani le game lena ingaba 2-2 3-2 4-1 4-2 but akendeki lokho njoba ngisho ukuthi le game itolo nabadlala emavuso bacale baphasi kakhulu emateam omabili lamaqembu Seabeds bekungahlangani bomuzi bekude bekuhlangana ngala ku Seabeds Mbabane Swallows nakhona
bogadlela bekungahlangani, bo Felix bekungahlangani, bo Tiger bekungahlangani, but ngicabanga ukuthi lokhu bese sekuba mgcoka kakhulu ukuthi yona imbabane Swallows ilithole igoal first half lakhe ayanda gadlela ngicabanga ukuthi uyaprove ukuthi again and again why imbabane Highlanders sorry imbabane Swallows yamsayina, yes, but overall ngingasho ukuthi le game akabi igame lenhle noma igame yoma chances lokuthi clear cut chances accreatiwe cha akabi le game le, but nje imbabane Swallows igciniwe lele game 1-0 ngalolu goal lakhe gadlela.
Yeah, see buka Highlanders ne Denver Sundowns. I think it's a clear win. It's a clear win for Highlanders, but I'm looking at Sundowns. Kungathi at sitting at the 5th position, master, nokuthi bebana 8 points. Mine bengibuka ukuthi batawusina kule game lena batibona bangena ku top 3 or top 4, but they failed.
Yes, so nayo le game le ekuqaleni ngicabanga ukuthi nawubuka both teams yona iDenver Sundowns yes Coach Milton asifiso wayo iDenver Sundowns ngisho ukuthi solo fikile kuDenver Sundowns iyabonakala le team ukuthi ifuna kwenta ini, iyabonakala indlela ladlala ngayo ngilolo sikufunako ke lokho ukuthi the brand of football or philosophy ya coach uyibone ukuthi okay lo coach lona ngicoach izibani sikubonile lokho, but nakhona ngicabanga ukuthi ema mistakes more especially ma set pieces because imbabane Highlanders iligole ekuqala ilithole through i set piece lakhe Vusi wakaVilakati lebe kuyikhona, but la in the middle of the park lamkhatsini kunaphupu laqhamuka khona ngibabane Swallows ngibonile ema passes awakhokha lamahle kakhulu. I think inyalo because inwazama uyalivula le ground nakayibamba le ball uyalivula ayifake ngale ka right ayifake ngala ka left, sekudzinga ukuthi basebenzise le advantage leyo yekuvula ema opponents. Ngibonile ukuthi naye eManyovu bekazama lokuthi asivulele isikhala aye ka right aye ka left, but uyadzinga ukuthi nakayithola le bhola ayisebenzise profitable. It's either nakayibamba le bhola ayibambe bese sokhatha abuye la ngemuva kancane la ku D-line bese kuba nalomvu utawukhona aqedzisa ku defense sibonile kudlala yena Palma banaThamizulu. I think ngekasho before ngathi labadlali lababili bo number 5, but ngicabanga ukuthi Mandla Palma ngeexperience yakhe uyakhona kuba versatile, uyakhona ukudlala i left center back lo aphinza adlale 4 lokuyi number 4 left center back or nangabe kuna umuntu lo udlala 4 adlale leyo sweeper role, but sibonile itolo ukuthi cishe badlalile abaka concede. But nje overall babana Highlanders imtholile Thoma goal menzi lesithole ugcina shale lesibili layo imbabana Highlanders siyamkhumbula ukuthi wayo iRoyal Leopard ubuya khona kuRoyal Leopard wakwadlalela ke yona imbabana Highlanders nembabana Swallows, so ngicabanga ukuthi experience yakhe ibonakele and uyakhumbula ukuthi naye coach Dumsani Makhanya lo solo sabambile for kubang head coach interim head coach mhlawumbe kancane nale experience lasanayo angiboni ukuthi angakhala kakhulu ngebadlali because midfield if utaba nabo Pupu ube nabo Thomo ube nabo Menzi then kuma forwards unabo bo Manyovu nabo bo Musa Dlamini. Ngicabanga ukuthi sekudinga ukuthi bathole the right combination babe consistent ekudlaleni ama games abo.
Yeah, no, they look like a really great team on paper. Good see, are they able to actualize that, master? Let's see in the long run. Maybe let's give them 5 games. About 5 games. I think the next 3 games going go are the most interesting. The top 3 facing the bottom 3. And the top 3 is they were supposed to really leverage, take the biggest opportunity in my team lagu bottom 3. Obviously, Madlenya faced Madlenya faced Rangers. Green Mamba faced Ezulwini United. Sibonile nayo Royal Leopard idlala ne Pirates. Master, what does this mean? I'm afraid we don't have the graphics and log standings, but sibuke ama-points. Madlenya had 12 points. Sangena kuye week 6. Green Mamba had 10, Royal Leopards had 10. Meaning that should Green Mamba and Royal Leopard win, they are ahead of Madlenya. But Madlenya didn't lose.
Sifisa nawubuka ukuthi iMadlenya bekuwumdlalo wayo wokuqala engashayela igoli. Wokuqala so lokuqala yona season. I think logo kutshela something ukuthi le team ihloseni. Yes, Rangers ngihlale ngisho ukuthi Rangers baba nenhlanhla lembi nangayibeka kanjalo kulamanye ama games ukuthi bangakhona ukuthi bawawine because the way Mthunzi la ihlanganise ngayo le team uyabona ukuthi uyadlala na ngikhuluma ngephilosophy ngikhuluma coach weDenver Sundowns Milton nangale ku Rangers ngicabanga ukuthi yena Mthunzi a very very good coach lo mbona ukuthi uyadlala the passing game possession football nangala kuMadlenya iMadlenya nangabe udlala nayo uyi big team. Yes, bebadlala neRangers cishe i-team labalingana nayo. Nawudlala uyi-big team ba defend in numbers bese bakushange counter attack. They use nakulabathi reinforced defense. Lokusho ukuthi labanye estradini bakhuluma ngekupaka ibhasi but nase bak-attacka uyabona ukuthi le team lena i-attacka with purpose basebenzisa kakhulu the flanks so ngicabanga ukuthi speed for them nabak-attacka nabadlala neRangers because kuyingoti kudlala nemuntu lolingana naye because naye i-mentality yakhe ithi okay Madlenya isefomini. But asi-respect sitawendani sitawingeta leti nombolo tibe tiniyendana lengemuva kwenta ukuthi wena bese sophuma kancane ku-game plan yakho so uyafuna wena ku-attacka throughout the game. So ngicabanga ukuthi overall lo 0-0 uvuma both teams because usho ukuthi asikangenisa amagoli sobabili. Yes, next game sekumele ukuthi kusentshetwe sithole lelo goal linye lokungenani.
Green Mamba is at the top of the log table as we talk right now. But iMadlenya is a game in hand. Obviously, Royal Leopard now in 13 points. All these three teams have 13 points. Would you say, look, iMadlenya ibe nayo 13 points, ibe idlale 5 games, haylo 6 wala mabili. But that's an advantage, especially if we look at the next attraction.
So now both teams yona i-Green Mamba ngicabanga ukuthi ngasho even nakusevikini leliphelile ngathi Green Mamba lokuthi lalamanye akadlali kahle akwekho lapha ku number 1 nama number 2 bona batibeka advantage because nase kubita kakhulu noma nase kubita kakhulu kuMadlenya sebadropa lama point like ibandile this past weekend. I-Green Mamba seyine advantage ukuthi yona nayiwina igame yayo ihlala etulo. So ngicabanga ukuthi nayo i-Royal Leopard nawibuka kancane iyafuna kubuya competition. So short nje singabuka ukuthi nasekutophela lo mnyaka ungakhanza ukuthi Green Mamba Royal Leopard then featuring any team letabe nayo seyiphakamise isandla ukuthi iyafuna kubuya icompete. So ngicabanga ukuthi ndasolongisho Sifiso the first 10 games ngiyola kunika i-direction ukuthi kahle kahle sibheke kuphi. Mina nje sengiyabona ukuthi ama teams la tawcompete acompetele i-league la tawbanga i-league again kutaba the forces team Green Mamba nayo i-Royal Leopard.
Kuma pending fixture singangeni ku week 7 ngoba na week 7 so vele sisimbuka ukuthi nangu so tudala. iMadlenya itawutholana nembabane Swallows nga3 kutabe kungilesithathu master kalanga center. Ngiko bengithi next attraction u-effecta kangakanani for iMadlenya ekubeni kule race ya top 3 ngoba naye le Green Mamba nane Royal Leopards labakhombisa nabo kucina they didn't have a good start le flawless njengayo iMadlenya. Uthini ngeMadlenya versus Swallows kuletawenda ukuthi lama teams aladla ama game lalingana. Is it going to be easy for Madlenya? What is it looking like?
A very very tough game Sifiso. Very very tough game for lamacem lamabili. ngishiso yini sifiso ukuthi imadlenya ibathanza babakhulu lama teams aka Premier League nawubuka le track record ukuthi bashaye bobani but again angeke kuze kubulula because yona imbabane Swallows inema experienced players the likes of Felix yes bomkhaya bakhe imadlenya siphofaneni then kunebadlali laba bosebonga Zwane a very exciting player kube nabo Sandile experience so ngicabanga ukuthi itaba tough le game for both teams madlenya khona kalanga still undefeated yes kuleague solo abakashayo so ngicabanga ukuthi le game lena ya midweek ngalesithathu itaba likhulu for both teams but njoba ngisho imadlenya ibathanza babakhulu nababakhulu ngathi ngilapho khona babafuna khona kakhulu.
Indeed, it's going to be interesting, Master, ngoba starts singena week 7 sitayibona iGreen Mamba nakuyo ngeke kube lula ngoba itawutholana neWanderers, Manzini Seabirds versus Young Buffaloes, Swallows itawuthi ibuya nje Wednesday bese ingena ku Denver Sundowns, Highlanders versus Molweni Pirates, highlighting some of the fixtures.
Ngitaba likhulu for iWanderers yodlala neGreen Mamba because iWanderers ikhale phansi ku Young Buffaloes nga 2-0 so bayanyalo bayakulenye i-team le strong so yeah ngicabanga ukuthi lama games awabavumi at the moment if utawuluza ku Young Buffaloes then next game yakho iGreen Mamba kulukhuni.
Master, we're going to respectfully skip the DSTV Premiership. I'm looking at Skatsetu, 7:46. We saw a lot of games go match day 10 of 38 where English Premier League. Siqalenge Tottenham versus Crystal Palace. Le game lemqoka nasiba ukuthi kunabani lapha at the top of the log standings. Besingeke siyikhobose. But ke I think lokho ebhlungu kakhulu engabe iChelsea tawulanyulelwa yini. Ngihlale ngibona lethi hlole tawula inkundleni tekuxhumana. Ndiba excited kakhulu nakutaqala igame. Kuthi kungathi nje bo 60 minutes igame yayibona ukuthi 90 minutes but kuthi kungaba 6 to beva sebathi angisafuni kufave ibhola. Football will kill us. That's the narrative around my supporters at Chelsea. Nonetheless, Arsenal fans are having the best obviously singasho ukuthi arguably njenga last season but maybe this year ngeke balingiselwa kulaba kwenda last season but 5-0 against Sheffield was a great win for Arsenal. The biggest game though was the Manchester derby. I want us to start where match day 10 aqale khona lokho bekuyi Tottenham versus Crystal Palace. Tottenham coming victorious nga 2-1. A score that I expected. Ngabe wena Master Boskati.
Yes, so Tottenham Spurs at the moment ngicabanga ukuthi idlala kahle best football in over 10-15 years nangayibeka kanjalo nangikhumbula kahle nje gcina kudlala kanje bekuna Harry Redknapp asakhotsha yona iTottenham Spurs the young Gareth Bale wathatha iPremier League by storm.
How many years ago was that again, Master?
I think 13 years. Nangaphosisi yeah because kuleko vele kubo 2011 2012 2013 so ngicabanga ukuthi ibuyile yona iTottenham iyadlala they play as a team. Madison lokuchamuka khona ku Leicester City udlala kahle kakhulu Song udlala kahle kakhulu yena captain wayo iqembu le Tottenham Spurs so njoba ngisho they play as a team. Richarlison yes Tinvo mhlambe emagoli ngendlela lawafise ngayo akusiyo ngendlela lawashaya ngayo but nawubuka le yona lama players lesengabalile ukhuluma ngama quality players again yena coach wayo iTottenham Spurs uqhamuka khona ku Scotland season yakhe ekuqala ku Premier League le so kunenge lesisagatsile kuye kunenge lesisakubukile ukuthi le consistency itaba khona in iTottenham at the moment iya leader top of the yona EPL but still a long way to go sifiso nangayibeka kanjalo.
Chelsea versus Brentford, Master, my team lelandzelanako lawa ku log standing. Brentford at number 10, Chelsea at number 11. Would you believe me? Kuthiwe nje bowuhambile Master Wak Island uyabuya lamuhla ngikutshela ukuthi iChelsea ing number 11 tikwaye kune Brentford kune West Ham kune Brighton Aston Villa all these other teams. Would you believe me?
sifisa kulukhuni man nawubuka ukuthi Chelsea le ndlela le assemblishe ngayo squad labadlali labakhona Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Gallagher, Raheem Sterling, Palmer,
Exactly.
angadi ngithi ngingababala ngithini kodwa nje Chelsea ngiyayibonga le team Saturday yangifakela imali but overall ngicabanga ukuthi nawubuka Sifiso nawubuka akusiyo indlela le team lekumele ngabe idlala ngayo kuluza ekhaya against Brentford akusiyo invo Stamford Bridge bowathi nje ukuthi Stamford Bridge akubuywa tikhatsini tabo Frank Lampard tabo Didier Drogba tabo John Terry tabo Michael Essien tabo Ashley Cole Peter Cech so ngababala ngitsini so nyalo ngicabanga ukuthi le team yehle kakhulu because na last season tinva thambanga kahle Pochettino ufikile lithemba belikhona kubalandzeli be Chelsea but nawubuka nalemali abayispendile over 600 in fact over 1 billion solo the new owner ifikile kuma transfers only so ngicabanga ukuthi le ndlela le team ledlala ngayo ay reflect kule squad lenaso ukuluza against Brentford njengoba sengishile ekhaya it's unacceptable.
Master info lena shothi le bonwa nguwe ngoba nawuthi ikwinsile Chelsea kule weekend shots wena you knew ukuthi tawudliwa.
Yes, prediction yami beshito njalo bekunike iBrentford vele straight win.
Wow, okay. Yeah, no, kungivisa buhlungu lokho Master. Asiqhubekele mpilo Liverpool versus Nottingham Forest. Obviously Liverpool still at number 4, still at kule chase yalapha ku top 5. Le very interesting stuff ngena kuyo masinyane but there was an easy win for Liverpool 3-0 predicted I suppose naleni kufakela imali kule weekend.
Yeah, isifisa nawubuka ukuthi yona iLiverpool labanyenti bakhuluma ukuthi i-off form but nawubuka ukuthi solo ayikho khashane nekuthi ibe sechancini wina ileague ngicabanga ukuthi ngilenye i-team leyingodi Sifiso because labadlali labalenabo Nunez Mohamed Salah yes mhlambe nangavetana nako Sifiso lokuthi yena Luis Diaz umdlali waseColombia ukidnapwe babwakhe singasho nje ukuthi sinaye ngemthandazo sinaye ngomoya ukuthi atholakale babwakhe and amaphoyisa aseColombia sakakhokha imali enga 200 million ukuthi lo tawutholakala lo tawubanelihala ukuthi ukuphi utawureward ngalo mali leyo so ngicabanga ukuthi bekangekho kule game le akayidlali bamnike yona i-break but nje Liverpool le squad sayo iyakhomba ukuthi ingacompete this season. Mark Alister bamsayinile a very good player usenabo bo Thiago basetawubuya bangene kule team usenabo bo Arnold usenabo bo Van Dijk usenabo bo Alisson so ngicabanga ukuthi iLiverpool ngeke uzuyivalele ngaphandle competent for i-league.
Master, number 2, 3, and 4 go log standings in the English Premier League. You have Arsenal, you have Man City, you have Liverpool, who have come out very, victorious the weekend, spectacularly so. Spuga 5-0, Arsenal 3-0, Man City 3-0 with Liverpool. But I would say Man City's 3-0, particularly because it was the Manchester derby. But without going into deep in Zabeni Manchester derby, because Master, we know Manchester is off form. That's even my head-to-head abo. Man City has been dominating Manchester United, so we'll be giving Manchester United credit. I want us to talk about the chase, position 1. Team Lamatatu. We see Arsenal at the second position with 24 points, having lost a single game. Man City has lost twice, but they haven't drawn. They've played better than Liverpool because they've all played 10 games and they're still ahead of them. Who do you really see good top 3? Would you see Tottenham being there? We are 10 games into the season. 15 games.
Ngicabanga ukuthi nawubuka le ma teams lo wabalako ukhuluma ngene Tottenham ukhuluma ngene Arsenal ukhuluma ngene Man City ngene Liverpool bonke labo nawubuka on paper ngicabanga ukuthi i Man City because of Halat, because of your Bernardo Silva, your Rodri, lo mdlali
Grealish, yeah.
world class. Grealish, ukhuluma ngabo Stones, ukhuluma ngabo Akanji, ukhuluma ngabo goalkeeper wayo Edison. Ngicabanga ukuthi isifiso iMan City ine chance because even ke nale Pep Guardiola factor lokuthi bona bana coach lona experienced coach serial winner but again ngishilo ngathi ungayivaleli ngaphandle iLiverpool because nabo Jurgen Klopp inaye ngilomnye coach longeke uze umvalele ngaphandle Arsenal kutawubita ukuthi onke labo the players badlale babe consistent, more especially Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, then Gabriel Jesus ulimele bekangekho kule game le Edin Nketiah lo shaya hat-trick, his first ever Premier League hat-trick la itfolile khona ngeweekend. Ngicabanga ukuthi nayo itawudzinga ukuthi enyuse masokisi kutawubita ukuthi bona badlale as a team because kude lo muntu longasho ukuthi outstanding at the moment kuyo le team. Tottenham Hotspurs bese ngibabalile labadlali nabo kutawubita ukuthi badlale as a team kakhulu ukuze babuye batawucompete. Otherwise le top 3 ngiyayibona iArsenal, ngiyayibona iMan City, ngiyayibona iLiverpool kule top 3.
You do see on paper Man City being the best amongst the 3.
Yes, because bese sokubana but nje this season behlukile man. Uyakhumbula ukuthi ulimele Kevin De Bruyne. Yes, akekho Gundogan, akekho Mahrez. Ngicabanga ukuthi logo kungayidlala inzima lenkulu ukuthi iMan City ingakhona kuyiwina futhi ileague. But having said that, njengoba ngishilo ukuthi ukhona Pep Guardiola umuntu lone mirror ngasho ukuthi the magic man nangayibeka kanjalo because itinvo uyakhona ukutihlanganisa tindeka.
Before we move into Springboks, njengoba sesitawuvala ngase Springboks, you highlighted something about wathi Liverpool kuthiwa ayikho kuform kahle, and I think that's a compliment for Liverpool. For them kuthiwa they are not on form, babe badlala bakule level labakuyo in terms of the log standings, it's just how it reflects ngetinombolo. It means if they do get in form, they are really a force to be reckoned with. Springboks defeat All Blacks 12-11, master. Itsinzile indzawo ngiyadlo kusunale history kakhulu ngoba Springboks angifuni highlight handle eningi, but yes, they've made history with claiming this World Cup. Just take us through the emotions as a Springboks fan yourself. New Zealand being one-man short and losing by 1 point. As someone who was there watching as just a rugby fan, longa si mvloyilandzelanga ke rugby. Ngone ngathi kumadima kakhulu for Springboks. It was actually luck for them ukuthi New Zealand itfile le red card.
So I think ema Springboks kule World Cup lena akadlali kahle. But kukhona timvula batende kahle Sifiso i-game plan yabo beyithi noma singadlali kahle but asiwavumeli ema opponents ukuthi ede as attack kakhulu. Ngicabanga ukuthi na ungabuka le score in fact kusuku quarter final na semi final na final onke lama games lawo bawuwine nga 1 point kukutshela something lokho ukuthi kube madima kanganani for yona ema host iFrance ba wina nga 1 point, England ba wina nga 1 point, New Zealand ba wina nga 1 point,
and that's quarter finals, semis
and finals. Ubone ukuthi kube likhuni kanganani for yona ema Springboks. So ngicabanga ukuthi inyalo Springbok isa yona eNingizimu Afrika they are the most successful team in World Cup history yayo irugby because bayiwine emahlandla lamane bayiwina 95, bayiwina 2007, bayiwina 2019, bayiwinile 2023 ba overtake yona ke iNew Zealand ngoba iNew Zealand iwina kathathu. Every time iSpringboks dlala ifinal siyayiwina. Ngicabanga ukuthi history leyo yena siya Kolisi only the second captain ukuthi akhona ku defender yona iWorld Cup, only the first ever black captain ukuthi awine iWorld Cup kabili. ngicabanga ukuthi logo ushilo ku speech sakhe ukuthi le win lena labangasema South African aba understand ukuthi isho ukuthini kubo the way iunite iSouth Africa ngayo. So singasho nje ukuthi congratulations iMabhokobhoko, ngasho kwesifiso kunakiwa kula 16 kuthi iMabhokobhoko atayiwina. Sesimele ukuthi ema-Proteas ku cricket asale ayiwina nayo.
Yeah, now congratulations to South Africa indeed. We've come to the end of our program. South Africa, the first team to win 4 World Cup crowns despite having missed the first 2 tournaments in 1987 and 1991. Let's hear Cyril Ramaphosa address the nation in South Africa later. Labatsembisa lo holiday. Kwelo muhle, sale kahle.